Y2K, a postmodern RPG, is not the worst game ever made, not by a country mile. It's not even the worst game I've ever played. I've played worse games made by far less talented people made solely for completely cynical purposes. I played The Slaughtering Grounds, for God's sake. Y2K, a postmodern RPG, is a game made in earnest by a marginally talented team that put some amount of heart into it. And I hate it more than any other game I've ever played. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the infrequently updated video series Luka Talks, where I, Luka, talk about whatever the fuck I want. Today I have a very special treat. Not for you, I don't care if you enjoy this video or not. This is a special treat for me. My reward for going through the arduous journey of playing Y2K, a postmodern RPG. I hope you all enjoyed watching me suffer through it, and if you didn't see that LP or want to try to claim that I can't review this game because I didn't play it, here's a card to my full Let's Play of the game. Hey, what's that picture of Andrew doing there? That's a completely weird, coincidence. That's a weird slip up in editing. That's completely by mistake. Yes, I chronicled my entire experience with the game just to avoid that particular criticism of this particular video. Well, not just. That's not the only reason I played Y2K. That'd be completely silly. People familiar with my Let's Play of the game will know that I started it with the express intent to try and find some good in the game, to understand it, to see exactly why Andrew Allenson is so incredibly defensive about it, and reacts so negatively to literally any amount of criticism about it. I say started because that's not where I ended up. My desire to understand Y2K left and never returned about halfway through the game. But I'm already getting a little bit ahead of myself. I'm sure there are people watching this video right now that know next to nothing about Y2K. So we're going to start off with a very, very brief plot synopsis because there's hardly any plot to begin with. Before the game even properly begins, it immediately jumps into some absolute bullshit nonsense that isn't even relevant until the very end of the game. It asks for your name, what you look like, with the two options being male and female coded images, gag, and the names of a bunch of people you know that meet certain criteria. It inelegantly asks for you to forget about this because the Allensons could not think of literally any better way to get this information out of you. You will likely keep it in the back of your mind every single second you play the game anyway. We then meet the game's protagonist, Alex Eggleston, a pretentious little douchebag returning home after finishing college with a liberal arts degree. The game makes numerous jokes about how useless this degree is in the real world, and it's a wildly original joke that we've not heard 100 times before. We all laugh, obviously. After Alex monologues for a good half hour-ish, his mother sends him on an errand that is hilariously waylaid by a cat, resulting in Alex chasing the mustachioed feline to an abandoned factory in a desperate attempt to recover his grocery list, because Alex is completely incapable of just remembering what's on the list or using deductive reasoning to figure out what groceries his household might need. One mind-numbing dungeon later, Alex meets a character named Semi Park, who seems to live in the abandoned factory and doesn't understand basic human concepts such as elevators. Fun little fact not related to anything, there's a chest in the room where you first meet Semi that is locked by a code. You cannot open this chest, not even after completing the laboriously long trade quest later in the game that gives you an item directly relating to Semi. It's just there. It doesn't do anything, not even on New Game Plus. Fucking brilliant. After a bit more dungeoning and solving idiotic puzzles, our two characters finally reach the elevator that takes them out of the factory. Not 5 seconds later, the elevator is pried open by some Starman rejects. Semi is taken seemingly against her will, and Alex is left on his own with a cat named Dolly. Thus begins Alex's quest to figure out what the fuck just happened. But there's something in here that I need to go over really quick first, because it's absolutely deplorable. Somehow, security footage from this abandoned factory that no one works at or even seems to know about leaked onto the internet, showing the events leading up to Semi's apparent kidnapping. The game shows us this video footage. Here it is. Now, some of you might notice that looks a little bit familiar, and it should, because Andrew Allenson literally ripped it off from the very real video footage that acts as the only piece of evidence into the very real death of very real woman Alyssa Lamb. I'm not going to show it in this video because what happened to this woman is very sad, and it's not my place to broadcast it all over the internet, but I will put it in the description if you want to see it. To say that it's insensitive to basically recreate the video footage in question would be something of an understatement. It would also be neglecting how much worse the association makes certain elements of the game's plot that transpire later on. Anyway, this singular event is the entire impetus for our unlikable protagonist to go on the entire adventure that he does. This is literally the only thing that matters in the game until, basically the third act. Andrew tried to write some scenarios that would distract from the whole Semi thing, but they all feed into Alex's singular desire to rescue her, or at least figure out what happened to her and why. However, the game soon devolves into complete and utter nonsense based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the concept of metaphysics. It is explained to Alex at some point that the knockoff Starmen that he saw take Semi away were soul survivors, wandering souls that had found their way from their own world to Alex's through the soul space.
Survivor is a soul that has left his physical form, as well as his reality, and entered into a world where a physical version of his or her soul already exists. Normally, when you abandon your physical form, you become an omnipotent entity who exists just in their own reality. You can't return to your body once you've left it behind. Soul survivors are souls whose realities have been destroyed, and they manage to leave their reality in hope of finding a physical form. So that being right there is Rory. A different Rory. One whose reality was destroyed, and he's attempted to find a physical reality to exist in.
But how do you know all this?
Because I have left my physical body, surfed, and explored the soul space, and come to understand the nature of the universe.
But you have a physical form. How did you return to your body when you say it isn't possible?
This is not my reality, Alex. There was another me here, and she left. I was able to take her physical space because her soul had already left this world.
And what is the soul space?
The soul space is... How do I explain this? Okay. Imagine a ring. In this ring is a series of worlds. When one world is destroyed, the soul space shrinks and the ring gets smaller. When a soul leaves their location in the soul space, another soul of the same origin, like another me, can take its place and regain physical form.
This is crazy. How did you figure all this out?
That's personal. Look, What leads people to find the soul space is different for each person, and I'm not going to share that with you.
It is also explained to him that Vela, a character we'll discuss in more detail later, is not this world's Vela, that the Vela of this world left through the soul space, allowing another world's Vela to take her place. This makes absolutely no goddamn sense given things we find out later in the game. Alex is later informed that his world will end soon, that he has absolutely no chance of mitigating it, and that he should immediately escape to the soul space himself and find a nice new world to reside in.
Wait, you're saying we can still stop this?
No. Your reality was doomed long ago. All realities cease to exist. The only thing you get to decide is if you aid in the destruction or fight against it.
Fight against it? But you said it was doomed! None of this makes any sense!
This reality will fade away, and another will take its place. But this does not mean that you can't prevent the loss of future realities.
How would I do that if we all die?
Come with me. Escape into the soul space. We can take your friends with us. Together, we will protect realities from the ultimate loss. Loss of souls who perish with worldly attachments in their hearts. When a soul is bound to the planet by thoughts and obsessions of worldly things, they die with the reality. But a soul that is free of love for the physical and longs only for the spiritual can find life in the soul space.
But I want to save this reality. What about my mother? My friends? I couldn't just convince them to enter the soul space. I don't even think I could convince my mother that there is a soul space.
What do you want to do, Alex? Whatever you decide, I am with you every step of the way.
Alex, being an RPG video game protagonist and the world's most arrogant hipster, decides to fight against the end of the world. The only problem being that he's the one who's going to end the world. He has no idea what that means, how he's going to do it, or how he's even going to begin to prevent it. But Alex barely thinks even one step ahead anyway and figures that just training and getting stronger will suffice. The end of the world will transpire at the end of the year, the moment the ball drops on New Year's Eve and the year 2000 begins, hence the name Y2K. I'll fill in most of the blanks here a bit later, but first I feel I should probably introduce you to some of the other characters that appear in this game, otherwise you'll have very little context for where this game eventually goes. There are party members in this game. They don't particularly matter all that much and don't factor into the overarching plot at all. They occasionally offer exposition that is necessary for the game to progress in any meaningful way. But other than that, they're effectively there for flavor. I'll introduce you to them regardless. First off, we have Michael Kuczynski, a character that is only likable in contrast to the protagonist. He's a high school senior that's really into photography and founded the occult-oriented forum Onism 1999, which is where the video footage of Semi was posted and happens to be a forum that Alex frequented.
When did you first get into this sort of thing?
I can't remember one thing that really pulled me in. My parents always fell asleep watching TV. They used to sneak into their room and watch those missing persons shows while they were sleeping. Once your mom finally got internet to Frankton, I started checking out some of the more paranormal websites. Before long, I realized that the information was too scattered. I spent a few weekends learning HTML, and before I knew it, Onism 1999 had over 15,000 hits each week.
Wait, you were involved with making Onism 1999?
You didn't know that? I figured that's why you kept talking to me about the missing Asian girl.
He has no other defining character traits aside from being slightly less of a complete asshole than Alex.
It'd be, good for you to learn to talk to girls before you go away to college.
I know how to talk to girls, but she is a senior citizen, man. What is she, like, 27? Ew. That's your thing, man.
Next, we have Bella Wilde, a character that starts off likable but becomes gradually less so as she warms up more and more to Alex for no discernible reason other than Andrew figuring he needed to have at least one manic pixie dream girl consistently present throughout the game. She's a musician from another reality, works at an arcade, and has a really tragic backstory involving a bad breakup. She's effectively Ramona Flowers, but written with substantially less depth and care. She does not pass the Bechdel-Wallace test, not even in the singular conversation that she has with a female character independent from Alex. The game cuts away before we can even begin to hear it. Rory Manser is a character, sometimes. The other three made up with him after he feeds them a false tip about Semi, fueled by his despair at the loss of his little sister who recently killed herself. All of his combat skills revolve around pacifism and protecting others, and he wields various signs with activist phrases. So you'd think he was some sort of activist. But the game does not allude to this even once. He mostly just spends his time on the internet and wants to learn how to make games, which is pretty neat, I guess. There is, however, one very important element to Rory's character that I can't not address in this video. His suicide. This game effectively has two different routes, one where Rory kills himself and one where he doesn't. This is entirely based on how the player chooses to interact with him, but it basically boils down to, did you actively choose to be a complete dick to Rory? I assume most players wouldn't even know that there's a chance for Rory to kill himself, because why the fuck would you even bother being a dick to him? But I bring this up for a very specific reason. If you get the route in which Rory kills himself, his ghost appears to Alex and tells him that it wasn't his fault, that he was planning on doing it anyway before he met them, which obviously is directly contradicted by the route in which Rory doesn't kill himself. This could read as if the party coming together changed Rory's life and prevented him from killing himself, but it comes across as Andrew Allenson bending over backwards to excuse the awful actions of his incredibly obvious self-insert character. Because there are many times in the game where Alex is a total asshole to Rory, completely beyond the player's control. This perception is only exacerbated by the 2-3 scenes in which Alex actually does some honest-to-God introspection, giving the impression that he does understand that his words and actions are selfish and ignorant.
Why did you just say that to Rory? The Alex I know would have never acted this way. Man, school really changed you. It wasn't school that changed you. Just think about it, dude. Yeah, why are you being such a dick, Alex? Seriously, man, keep it together. I know you got scared because we almost died down there, but can't you see that Rory is hurt? His sister freaking killed herself. I don't get you, dude. You know full well that you're overreacting, but you just won't back down. Will it kill you to say you're sorry? Seriously? Just say you're sorry. You know, you're really gonna regret this once that hot head of yours has cooled it. Bella's not ever gonna go on a date with you, and Michael's gonna find better friends in college. Seriously, just stop being such a loser. I think Vela thinks you're a stuck-up rich kid who's never known real-world problems in his life. I think the same thing, actually. Okay, so now you're going back to reality. Are you ready to back down? I want to say I'm sorry. I don't know if I can. There's always time to say you're sorry, right?
But then he goes and does them anyway immediately after.
How do you expect me to remain calm with all this crazy shit going on around us? Just because you're cool with soul survivors and astral projection or whatever the hell you've been on about, doesn't mean everyone else is! Alex! Shut up! Stop it! This isn't all about you, you know!
These scenes appear immediately before Alex's most egregious examples of selfishness and childishness, and then it completely disappears soon after. because I guess even Andrew got tired of trying to justify Alex's abhorrent behavior. Moving on, we eventually meet the last two party members, Claudio and Chandra. These are two of the only genuinely likable characters in the game, and I attribute that entirely to Andrew not having enough time left in the game to fully ruin them. This does, however, leave them slightly underdeveloped. Claudio owns a chain of music stores and is super into anime.
Hey, Claudio, wait up. So you're into shoujo anime? That's cool. Most guys aren't brave enough to walk around in a shirt like that. Also, you do know that's a girl's shirt, right?
Girl shirt? Oh man, that's messed up. This is no more a girl's shirt than Mahou Shoujo Haru no Shimai is a girl's anime! This show represents everything that is good about life!
Oh, well, I've never seen it. I just, assumed it was a girl's anime with all the exploding flowers, pink, and Sailor Moon ripoff characters.
Chandra's into music and hula hooping?
Disfigured by Eliga's on High Altar of Honor. That is my personal favorite. I used to hula hoop to it all the time.
Claudio has a particular interest in helping Alex find Semi because he and Chandra's little brother went missing years ago, never to be seen again, which, I guess that's a motive. Lastly, we have the Essentia 2000, an android from another world. We see her in brief dream sequence vignettes throughout the game.
We hear a faint electrical crackling, and a hint of life crosses behind the eyes of the sleeping figure. But as soon as it appears, it fades imperceptibly to a flicker. We confer on our thoughts on the machine and decide that there is activity inside of its circuits. We refrain from referring to it as alive, as logic and science dictate that this is only an emulation of life. This creature has no feelings, no desires, no wants.
And she effectively replaces Semi as Alex's core love interest, for a brief time. She is, apparently, a pan-dimensional entity that is aware of all of her various lives across the soul space and experiences them all simultaneously. Two of those lives are, coincidentally, Semi Park and Bella Wilde. She's fine, I guess. She's not really much of a character. She, like Semi, is almost entirely a plot device with some character traits thrown in for flavor. She has a bit of a sense of humor. That's about it, really. It becomes clear really quickly that the only character Andrew bothered to write in any depth is Alex. The other characters are written about as well as the gameplay is designed, which is to say, not at all. Considering how little I've talked about this game as a, video game, you'd be forgiven for thinking that I was just talking about a really bad YouTube miniseries, but Y2K is, unfortunately, a video game, and it does, unfortunately, have a gameplay. I'm not going to pussyfoot around saying this. Y2K plays like absolute dog shit. Every single attack you perform in this game is accompanied by a poorly designed minigame that you must complete at least somewhat successfully to inflict any amount of damage on an enemy. I am not inherently against this form of RPG combat. I love Paper Mario and have always hailed Under Hero as an underrated indie gem. The problem is that none of the minigames in Y2K are any good, and most of them take way too much time to complete. Alex's default attack requires you to hit highlighted areas on a spinning record. Depending on what weapon he is equipped with, this minigame can take anywhere between 10 to 20 seconds to complete. This problem becomes all the more infuriating as the health scaling on enemies is absolutely fucking atrocious. Every single fight in Y2K is likely to take you upwards of 5 to 10 minutes to finish because every single fucking enemy has a fuck-zillion health, and there is literally no character in the game that does even close to sufficient enough damage to make combat even somewhat less of a tedious grind until the end game. This is most notable when you encounter a mimic, which will be often because the Allinsons don't know the meaning of the word restraint. I kid you not, every time I encountered one of these little bastards, they occupied an entire fucking episode's worth of time in my Let's Play. For 19 of the potential 20 hours that you will play this game, there is no point where you feel like your party is strong, or even on the same level as the enemies you encounter, even if the enemies are literally 5 levels below everyone in your party. You will endlessly repeat the same 4 minigames, finish a combat encounter, make a little bit of progress, enter another combat encounter, rinse and repeat until you feel your brain leaking out through your ears and need to lay down. None of the skills that any member of the party has are actually useful. They all do comparable damage to each character's default attack, and each default attack is significantly shorter to perform. Dominant strategy is something taught in Game Theory 101 for the record. The only skill in the game that is actually useful is Alex's LP toss, which is an attack that hits every enemy that you are fighting and, let's see, completely breaks the fucking game if you build Alex right, which I did. LP toss by the end of the game has the potential to do 1000 damage to every enemy you are facing. It one-hit kills anything. It brought both of the last bosses down to 1 HP the first time I encountered them in one hit, forcing me to purposely lose the fights because they're not fights that you are meant to win. And boy howdy, that breaks immersion something fierce. All of the dungeons are awful. There's not a good puzzle among them. They're long, tedious, frustrating, and the game would be better off without them. The closest the game gets to an actually good dungeon is the absolute last one. And even that was plagued with various soft locks and crashes for me, so I couldn't even enjoy that one without wanting to tear my hair out. I now cannot open any of these. Will I be able to save? What the fuck? That soft locked, that hard locked the game. This game is built poorly. If I'm in a dialogue, I should not in any way be able to interact with another interactable. Fuck. And now that I've rambled enough about how absolutely horrible this game is to play, and have mentioned both the last bosses and the final dungeon, I figure we should get back to summarizing this game's plot and discussing how it ends. Fuck, this video is going to... It's time to go into a little bit more detail about the game's plot and how the game ends, which is convenient because I've effectively already covered everything that actually matters up to the ending. 17 of this game's 20 hours are spent on complete and utter garbage filler. None of it matters. The game openly mocks the player for thinking something might actually be important, taking you on a long journey to discover the location of a magical record forcing you into an absurdly long conversation with a man that has absolutely no relevance to the plot.
Yeah, okay, enough about this topic. Can you tell me about this tea we're drinking?
This here is something I only bring out when friends are over. It's called Da Hong Pao. It's a world-famous tea, exceptionally rare and difficult to come by. The bushes that produce this tea are reportedly over 1,000 years old. Make sure you don't spill a drop. This is very special tea.
Where did you get this? It's amazing.
It is amazing, right? I can't explain to you in detail how all these circumstances are related. It would be a very long and very complicated story. And I mean no disrespect to you when I say this. It would be virtually impossible for you at this stage, young man, to understand. Now, you are, of course, in no way responsible for this, but I'll do my best to explain the circumstances by which I came to possess this rare leaf. In my youth, I was something of a traveler. I lived for journeying and discovery. I had a partner, a very good man, who became ill in his mid-30s. At the time, I considered myself to be very worldly. I lived for the dirt under my feet, but I also did not believe in the supernatural in any form. Alas, my partner came down with a severe stomach cancer that began to claim his life. He was a spiritual man, one might say, and he believed in miracles. His faith and his failing body led to the ending of our friendship. He left for India, and I stayed back in Arizona, where I'd built a life for myself in between trips. He was gone for many weeks when I received a letter from him. The letter was scribbled in the handwriting of a dying man. It featured coordinates that, upon further inspection in an atlas, proved to be in the mountains of India. So I began my journey. After many days of travel, I arrived at the summit of Mount Kanchenjunga. I paid a local village boy to guide me to the location. At the top, I found my friend. My friend who only a few weeks ago had been on the brink of death, had been cured through the power of water. The water boiled in the particular style of pots created by the Dharabeta yogis is said to have amazing healing powers. Now, when my friend had regained his strength tenfold, I was in shock. I longed to take a sample of this drink back to an American laboratory where it would be tested and ultimately turned into a cure. But I was told that the last bush bearing the tea had burned up in a forest fire. Naturally, I demanded proof. There was no evidence that any such fire ever occurred. Angered, furious, on the point of striking the yogis, my friend had to take me away. Together, we explored the mountainside for the remainder of the week. Now, despite my anger that they would not let me test the tea, everything had been incredibly happy. In India, I've always felt an incredible glow of joy. On our last day, before we were to return, the earth gave out beneath my feet, and I was stuck. Soon a storm came. The storm was so bad, I feared it would wipe away the mountain, and I'd be stuck in a landslide. This is where things became interesting. My friend was able to break away at the rocks binding my feet with his bare hands. He had expelled the disease from his body and achieved a new strength. I believe I would have died on that mountain had it not been for him. I hold true to the fact that he survived his cancer so he could save me. When we returned, the yogi hermit had left his camp, but he left behind the pot he created to cure my friend's cancer and a container of this tea.
Wow. That's a fascinating story, man. Really, this is an amazing cup of tea.
All because Alex didn't actually read the records jacket to see that Vela composed it.
Yes. The Mystical Ultima LP Legend by Vela Wilde.
Did you say Vela Wilde?
Yeah. But didn't you know this already? It's on the cover. Did you even read it?
And the only thing this record does when Alex finally gets it is wake up the Essentia 2000. Even though there's no real reason that it should do that, because the Essentia explains that she was able to come to Alex's world because Semi was taken, even though Vela and Alex are there, and they share a soul, and there's no reason she should have been asleep at all, or, again, a reason that the record should be the thing that wakes her up. It's all contrived bullshit to pad for time, because Alex had an idea for the ending, but had no fucking clue how to actually get there. And once we get there, oh boy, it is certainly not worth the wait. The world ends, despite the fact that I, again, defeated the boss so handily that I had to force myself to lose. Everybody dies. Alex is shunted out to the soul space as the sole survivor, get it? And is doomed to wander it for eternity. He finds a small rock populated by Alexes from other worlds that have ended, all talking about the Essentia 2000 and how she led them on to serve her own secretive purposes. He meets the Dark Alexes, who all morph together into the Alex meteor that has destroyed countless worlds and continues to destroy countless worlds before Alex's eyes, unable to stop them. I am running out of energy describing all of this because it's so fucking stupid. Alex hatches a plan. He knows how the soul space works. He knows he can traverse to other worlds and, at the very least, communicate with other iterations of himself. And where, dear viewer, do you think he decides to travel to? What world do you think Alex figures is the last hope to stop this endless cycle? Ours. It's ours. You see, dear viewer, all of Alex's monologues throughout the game were not actually monologues. They were one side of a conversation that he was having with us, the player. Because we are Alex, as nauseating as that sounds, and the friends we named at the start of the game are parallel versions of the party members that we've grown to tolerate and, well, just tolerate. We are Alex's last hope to end the cycle of world destruction once and for all, and we are pulled to the last boss of the game. That last boss being, well, Alex, of course. It's Alex all the way down, you see. He's the only character in the game that actually matters, after all. To be more specific, I suppose it's twin Alexes that are linked to each other for eternity. One twin absolutely hates the situation that she has found herself in, and assumes the role of the Essentia 2000 to coax other Alexes along the path to kill her twin and end her endless torment. And I guess that Alex is also the one that has orchestrated this cycle of world destroying for some reason. Listen, it makes no sense, and it's barely explained, and it makes my head hurt just to think about it again. So, you know, cool that every world's Alex is as well adjusted as the protagonist we've all grown to despise. Thus begins the worst boss fight in RPG history. It might have been a bit better if I hadn't built Alex to be completely busted, because I absolutely destroyed the boss and both of its ads in one hit, and found myself very confused that I was not allowed to actually win. The boss remained at 1 HP, and I once again had to force myself to lose. And what is this in service of? What purpose is there for the last boss of the game to be a scripted sequence that you have no chance of winning? A Deus Ex Machina that serves exclusively as a ham-fisted reference to the Allison brothers' previous game, Two Brothers. That's literally it. There's no other purpose to it. No other reason you shouldn't be allowed to just end the fight victoriously. They just wanted to reference their previous game despite the fact that it serves no narrative purpose and makes absolutely no goddamn sense. You don't even get to continue the fight after this. You can jump back into it if you want, but you'll just find yourself in the same situation. The game forces you into this fight the first time just so you can kill the ads, because they were blocking 2 plugs on the either side of the room. Pulling these plugs kills the twin Alexes. Because we were incapable of doing that before, I guess. For some reason, despite the fact that the boss is incredibly easy, and I could have killed it in 1 hit, who fucking cares? The game is almost over anyway. Alex and the player pull the plugs, ending the lives of the twin Alexes and the cycle of world destruction, only leaving behind Alex Prime, the best Alex. And that isn't the protagonist of the game we've been playing, it's us. Alex gives a little speech that we're the Alex that he always dreamed of being, and then the game ends. Whoopee, we did it. What a thrilling, exciting conclusion. There is, however, a second ending, a better ending, if the way it's framed is to be believed. It is, however, not better. It is disgusting at best and morally reprehensible at worst. Let's talk about Semi. So, Semi Park. She's the crux of the entire narrative. She's Alex's call to action. She's Alex's obsession. She and her disappearance are based on a real-life woman that died tragically and rather horrifically. I mentioned that the footage of Semi being abducted by the Soul Survivors is so strikingly similar to the footage preceding Alyssa Lamb's disappearance that it might as well be a one-to-one recreation. But I didn't mention the fact that the game makes further reference to the tragedy of Alyssa Lamb. While Alex and the gang are searching for the whereabouts of the, at the time, mysterious android, they receive various tips about locations that people have spotted the van that held her. One of these locations is a water tower just outside of Rory's town. Once there, Rory tells a story about how, at some point, the town's water supply had become contaminated, so workers went up to inspect the water tower, and found the corpse of a young woman floating in the water. There is no easy way to climb up the water tower, no way that this young woman would have been able to get into the water tower, no conceivable way for this tragedy to have occurred whatsoever.
Do you guys see a van?
I don't see anything. Yo, you want to hear a screwed up story?
Yeah, what's up?
You see that water tower up there? About a week after Sammy Pack went missing, people in my town started complaining about the color and taste of the water. My house wasn't affected because we have a well. So the water company opens up the tower and they find the body of a girl. She has no clothes on and she's been in there for days. What's really screwed up is she was locked in there. You can't really lock yourself in a water tower when the water is 5 feet from the lock, even more so when the lock is on the outside. So police came in and they ruled it an accident. So some girl accidentally climbs on top of a water tower, picks the lock, jumps 5 feet into the water, then manages to lock herself in from the outside. Yeah, I buy it.
Wait, are you serious? How the hell was this not on the news?
It was. Headlines read, "Small Town Tear, Unclean Drinking Water." Somehow these lazy jerks at the news stations managed to turn what was most likely a horrific murder into a gross story that focused more on the quality of drinking water than about an actual person.
How did she get up to the water tower? I don't see a ladder.
Ah, that's what I was forgetting. A logical person would deduce that they removed the ladder so it wouldn't happen again. This is where it gets really creepy. There was never any ladder, and you'd need a really big ladder.
So some crazy murderer with a big ladder could still be hanging around out here?
Yeah, probably. I made a post about this on Onism 1999, but we were never able to figure it out. What's even more screwed up is they never identified the body. Poor girl.
This story, of course, is referencing the death of Alyssa Lamb. Without context, not linking it to Semi, the character that is obviously a reference to the same woman, it's just a spooky story that is told as if it's just an urban legend. This is frustrating, because soon after Semi disappeared and the story was mysteriously leaked to the Onism 1999 forum, Alex made note that the people of the forum didn't care so much about the fact that a young woman went missing, but cared more about the mystery of it all, the intrigue, the possible link to the occult. He despaired that Sammy had gotten lost in the story in favor of unraveling the mystery.
We uploaded the photos to Onism 1999 and waited for an explanation. We had our doubters, but more people wanted to believe than not. And with each reply, Sammy got pushed further away from the forefront of the discussion. I explained how the building was the same one from the Elevator Girl video, but everyone was more concerned by the creepy figures in the photo. Each time my little mailbox turned red, I slowly realized that everyone on this forum wanted the content to be true. They needed it to be. A few people tried to explain why the photos were distorted, but most people believed it to be ghosts, or the devil, or other stupid things like that. I considered myself something of a philosopher in college. I thought I had answers, but now that I've come face to face with the otherworldly, I know now that every person who tells you about spirituality, dead people and all that have no idea what they're talking about. Someone told a lie and it somehow stuck. I told the truth, and it just gets muddied up by that same ancient myth. With the exception of my post, most of the things on that forum seemed like lies. That wasn't until about 2 weeks after my post, when a user posted something about a girl who could rip holes in time and space. I wouldn't have believed it myself, but he had photos, and we had seen the girl before.
That is, very obviously, dialogue written from the perspective of Andrew Allenson, who admits that he had become personally obsessed with the story of Alyssa Lamb and felt very similarly. So it begs the question why he felt it appropriate to insert an allegory to this real woman in his game, make her a manic pixie dream girl love interest for his self-insert protagonist, add on the fact that she's a pan-dimensional android on top of that, and then write the game's second ending.
I came from here. Is there anywhere else? Anyway, I've been looking for my cat, Dali. Have you seen her?
So the stupid thing was a girl? I just assumed it was a boy cat, seeing as how it had a spindly mustache. Although, now that I reflected on it, facial hair was not exclusive to male animals or male humans for that matter.
Y2K's second ending has nothing to do with the world ending. There's no heroics or fights or bosses. The path to getting the second ending is somewhat obscure and involves a extended trade quest. The goal is to go against the narrative and achieve the happy ending that Alex quote-unquote deserves. The second ending is Alex finally finding Semi, the two locking in an embrace. Semi telling him that she loves him and that she hopes they meet again in another world. The second ending is Alex getting the girl. The girl that is based on a real-life woman who tragically died. The girl whose death Andrew Allenson became obsessed with. The girl who, supposedly, Andrew Allenson despaired was lost in the narrative of her death in favor of the mystery behind it. Andrew Allenson turned Alyssa Lamb into a manic pixie dream girl love interest for his self-insert character in his fucking video game and wrote an obscure, hidden ending to it where he got the girl in the end. This is the sort of thing that makes me question the sort of person that actually likes this game. I don't think I could ever be friends with someone who likes a game that has this kind of reprehensible garbage in it. I don't think I could even hold a conversation with a person that thinks this game is worth defending in light of this. Learning about the existence of this ending, watching it on YouTube, knowing the context behind it, has made me immensely regret doing literally anything to put more eyes on this game. It makes me regret wanting to give this game a fair chance. It doesn't deserve that. It barely deserves this video. Y2K is not the worst game in the world, not by any stretch. There are good things about it, but I'm not going to bother talking about them here. Not after what we just discussed. All I will say is that some level of talent was clearly put into this game, and that the Allensons could probably make a good game if they actually bothered to do any amount of introspection and tried to take some criticism of Y2K to heart. That's not going to happen because Andrew Allenson is a pompous, self-righteous little twat, but that's what it would take for them to make a good game. While it is not the worst game in the world, it is, by far, my least favorite game that I have ever played. There were very few times playing this where I felt any amount of enjoyment. There was no fun to be had here. I made an observation in my Let's Play that this game could very easily be a troll. The Allensons purposely making an abysmal game as a kind of social experiment. But there's too much heart put into it for that, for better or worse. I don't recommend you buy this. I don't recommend you play it. I don't even recommend that you pirate it if you're that desperate. Don't expose yourself to this more than you already have. It's not worth it. If you really must, watch my Let's Play of it. That's the inherently superior experience because you do not need to play it for yourself. Andrew Allenson, if you're here and managed to sit through all of this criticism to get to this point in the video, I have only 2 words to say to you. Fuck you.